My name is Shawn Powell. I'm the chief plant operator for the wastewater treatment plant in Ablo Beach, California. I am also the drinking water chief operator for the same town. I have 15 years of experience in waterworks and have been a certified operator for 13 of those 15 years. I currently oversee a wastewater treatment plant that's got 2 biological processes, an MDR and a trickling filter, but I also oversee a chlorinated continuing drinking water system and distribution system where we are constantly trying to ensure the public health through prevention of nitrification and bacteriological infiltration from water leaks and things of that nature. I was in the parts house of a well we were fixing up one day when I got a phone call from one of my lead operators. He was very panicked. His voice was shaking and saying that he got knocked into traffic as he was working on a water main because the corporation stop blew off its saddle, hit him and backwards, and now we had a geyser pouring water all over power lines and flinging rocks towards cars, and he needed help right away. So we immediately got in touch with all the people that needed to be gotten in touch with: fire department, police department for traffic control. I got my crew going. In that role, I was the public works supervisor, so I had a staff of 12 people, operators and streets crew that reported to me. So I mobilized what I felt needed to be mobilized in that moment, and we got the equipment over there to stop the geyser first of all, and then move on with a repair in a timely fashion. The problem with this water main, though, is that it fed the town. It was the transmission main for the town. So if we turned it off, we had to turn off water for the town. So we had to do it live. And it was a very difficult repair, but we did succeed. We were a pretty close-knit community there. It was not a very big town. So I had the chief of police, I had the fire chief, my boss, the public works director. I had them all on my cell phone. So I called them immediately. And those who did not pick up, I texted. And then I called City Hall's front desk. And this was standard operating procedure when something like this was going to occur, is I called them to let them know, we have a water emergency. You are going to receive phone calls. And it would be wise if you actually called out to people in that area that are customers and let them know what's going on, because they might lose water service. At the very least, I'm trying to tell City Hall to get ready, because you're about to get a ton of phone calls, and what to tell people. And so with the fire department, what I needed to communicate with them was, if we have to turn water off, this was in the middle of the summer, by the way, in California, if the water goes off, you lose a lot of fire flow. And we also have to talk to the police, because if we have to turn off this main, hospitals, schools, they all lose water service. So we have to be prepared for the worst case scenario would be evacuations. And the best case scenario is a short water outage. But these are the types of communications that are happening behind the scenes when a massive water leak like this occurs. The repair took us about 4 hours, and a lot of that was due to the conditions of doing it live. The pressure coming out of that saddle was about 110 PSI. So to do that live is incredibly difficult. We had to deploy a few different strategies, and we ended up opening up a fire hydrant across the street to try to bleed some of that pressure off. And that opened up new difficulties, which was public relations. While we were dumping hundreds of gallons a minute of water on the ground to give us hydraulic advantage, a lot of customers, ratepayers, were yelling at us that we were wasting water. So that added to the stress. So there was traffic control, there was crowd control, there was safety of my crew. And so we methodically went about it, and it was worth losing that water to make sure that everything was safe and done properly. Yes, I do believe we were prepared as best we could. We were a remote town, about 1 hour drive to the nearest parts store. The well I happened to be in when that operator called me was our parts warehouse. So we had saddles, bushings, corporation stops, pipe, tools, any tool you needed. We were super well equipped, and actually something we did for the town as a standard operating procedure is anytime somebody used a part out of that room, they wrote the part down on a piece of paper so that we would build a restock list. So once a month, I would call Ferguson Waterworks, was our main supplier, and I would call Ferguson and I would say, hey, Joel, I need, this many saddles, this many valves, etc. And they would deliver them. And so when something like this happens, you are never really ready for it because it's an emergency, it's unexpected. So it's more psychological, but in terms of logistics, this is why wastewater plants, drinking water plants, and drinking water distribution systems must have a critical spare parts inventory on hand. You do not want to be in this position without parts. That's where we, I think, excelled in this situation. That's a good question. Next time, I hope to never have a next time, but if I was to do it next time, I would have cleared the main out a little bit more. I would have opened the street up a little bit more. We tried to just go for the repair right there, but that water jet was so violent. It went poorly on my attempt, and another couple guys tried how you do this repair is you open the valve up and you try to catch the column of water that's shooting in the air through the valve so that you can place it and start threading onto the saddle. What I might have done differently is we were able to pull the bushing out of the saddle to try to use the saddle that was already on the pipe. Remember, it's the corp stop that blew off, not the saddle. If I were to do it again, I would actually excavate around the pipe, which would have taken longer time. I would have pre-fit a valve on a different saddle. I would have cut the saddle off and cleaned the pipe up and slid the new saddle on and then fit it and then isolated it. Well, the way we did it was a little bit more reactive and trying to get the water off sooner. So yeah, it would just have taken us probably an hour or two longer, but that was how I would have done it. And the reason I talked about the way we were doing it is myself and another guy, in order to see this leak, we had a vacuum truck's boom over the geyser so we could actually see. Otherwise, it would have been impossible. And it was vacuuming up the water jet. Well, two of us lost our corp stops up the boom because you had a vacuum on it, and the water blew the corp stop out of our hands. So there goes a $100 valve. And then, here comes Chris to try, and there goes a $100 valve. And so thankfully, our equipment operator, who is apparently a superhuman, had a lot of strength and was able to get in there and thread it on for us. So that's what I would have done differently. It was just the approach would have been to just replace the whole saddle. We had training drills we would do, but they weren't as often. What really actually prepared us for this was a seasoned crew. We were in the middle of this doing a lot of this type of work where a meter contractor was going through and installing water meters through the town. So we were not foreign to water leaks. This was just the biggest magnitude we'd experienced as a crew. The best preparation is experience. You can round table all you want. You can talk about it all you want. You can drill all you want, but there's a saying that goes, everybody has a plan until they're punched in the face. So you can't prepare for those things you don't expect to happen. We did not expect this to happen. So I was very fortunate to have a lot of good seasoned operators working under me in this role, and we could bounce ideas off each other. And one of the first ideas that came about as the water's gushing all over the place was one of the guys said, we need to stop the bleeding. We need to stop the water going all over the place in the air. It's creating a spectacle. So he jumped on the backhoe and slid a trench plate over the geyser. So it was still a massive leak. It just didn't look as bad, right? There was not people with cameras taking pictures of this water geyser that's no doubt going to end up in the newspaper. This was more like it's contained under that big piece of steel. And now we can have a meeting. We can stand in a circle and breathe for a second and talk about what our next steps are. I would say the best mindset you can have is a clear and open-minded one. When you panic, your mind closes. When you start freaking out because something happened that you weren't expecting, you get tunnel vision. You start only seeing one solution. When you breathe and realize that, first of all, nobody's getting hurt or might get hurt, you got to look at safety absolutely first. Because you can pay for buildings, you can pay for windows that get knocked out, you can pay for all these things, but you cannot replace human life or limb. So the very first thing an operator needs to do is slow down, focus on the scene, assess the scene, and make sure that everybody is safe. In the 5 to 10 seconds it takes to do that, to just look around, you will save yourself a ton of work and potentially a workplace injury. So first of all, just make sure everything's safe, breathe, don't panic, and then you can start formulating a plan and listening to input from others. I have seen operators in the very recent past, over something that I didn't think was a very big deal, running into traffic without traffic control, without a safety vest to turn the water main off because there was a leak. And I had to pull them aside and say, the only thing that's happening here is we're losing water out of the tank and it's going down the drain. Nobody's house is getting washed away. Nobody's getting hurt. Nobody's dying. So the other thing you need to focus on there is personal property damage. Is this water flooding somebody's house? And even then, most cities have insurance companies and risk management companies that I would actually place that phone call. Hey, sewage backed up into somebody's house, or hey, water's flooding this house. You're on that. You should have a crew for that. And so my job is to make sure that the staff, the operators are all safe and thinking clearly, and then we can proceed with an open mind to the best possible solution to the problem. So this is an interesting one. The only time to really act quicker than the procedure says is when somebody's life is threatened or personal property is threatened. Those procedures are oftentimes the most direct route to the proper solution. So yes, it may appear that we have to move faster than the procedure says, but like I've already said, if you've got a procedure in place, a step-by-step process for emergencies, time is critical, but that's why you have the procedure. And you will debrief after every one of these and say, what could we have done better? What was superfluous? What did we not need to do that could get us towards the goal a little faster? So yes, there are times where you have to say, I don't have time to do that, but you really have to stop and ask yourself, why am I saying I don't have time to do that? Is it truly because somebody's life is at risk, or because I'm panicking and there's water everywhere and I think I need to go turn it off real quick rather than putting wattles down, or rather than putting up traffic control or whatever it is? And as an example of why you do need to breathe through this and follow procedures, I had a leak last year, different than the one I'm telling you about, where same thing, a contractor ripped his curb stop out, it was curb stop. And I had water shooting over palm trees into somebody else's backyard. Okay. And it went like that for about an hour and a half while we slowly and methodically set up traffic control. Again, nobody was hurting, but from the outside looking in, you would say, oh my goodness, look at that. It's water everywhere. And from my vantage point, I say, there's a way to do this. And following this procedure is the quickest way to the proper solution. Something I would tell the newer generation is to follow your lead. Again, don't panic. That's the number one rule I would always say about an emergency is breathe, slow down, observe, watch the veterans out there, the people who have been doing this a long time, and how they react to it. And personally, the person I look for is one of the more experienced, skilled workers that's moving slowly. And that's the person I would want to get next to, because that means, I've said this a lot in the past to people I've been training, the person that's moving slowly during an emergency, who's typically a skilled worker as well, has seen a lot, and they are reacting appropriately. The people who are running around with their hair on fire and are breathing really hard and yelling, I often, not always, often tend to believe those are the people who have not seen as much. And so if you're brand new, keep your eyes open for the person who has not only a ton of experience, but it's moving methodically and safely through the process, and learn from that person. Just don't panic, breathe through it. And the only way you can get better at emergencies is getting through the emergencies. This is not the only emergency I've ever been on. There are about emergencies every couple months, it seems, that are out of our control. It could be a storm event at a wastewater plant. It could be a lake turnover at a drinking water plant. It could be something like I just mentioned, where a main breaks and you've got water splashing all over the place. The only way to learn is to go through it. And so when you find yourself in these situations, the way I went about it as a young operator, and why I believe I've made it to the level I've made it, is I embraced the emergency with open arms and an open mind, and kind of enjoyed it. Like, it was a super interesting learning experience, and it's the only way I was going to be able to learn from it. And one quick story: I was in a trench once digging up a water main as an operator, and I had another operator who was at the top of the trench criticizing me for working next to the laborers. The laborers were there to dig up the water main, not me, but I was down there with them doing it. And he said, "Man, you work too hard." And I said to him, "One day I'm not going to have a laborer. I need to know how to do this. So I'm going to be doing the plumbing with them. I'm going to be doing everything with them, because what happens at 2 a.m. when laborers don't pick up their phone?" And that very thing happened about 6 months later. A main broke, carped the road up. The fire department called me at early hours of the morning. I called that operator. He didn't pick up. I called my superintendent. He didn't pick up. I was calling everybody I could. Finally, one contractor picked up, and he came out and helped me excavate, but they didn't touch water mains. So I was the one that had to do the work. And my advice is, get in the hole when you can. Embrace these things with open arms, and don't ever think you're working too hard, because you never know when that thing you're doing is going to aid you in the middle of the night during an emergency, or when nobody's coming to help.